Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to give a talk on biochemical basis of abiotic stress. So this is what I'm going to talk today. I'll be first dealing with salinity stress. Next is heat stress, then drought stress, cold stress, and finally the heavy metal stress. What is abiotic stress? Abiotic stress is nothing but the stress caused on plants due to abiotic factors like salinity, drought, heat, cold, heavy metal, and majority of them are the natural calamities. And they cause vast damage to the crop yield. So when the environment is adverse and the plant growth is affected, the metabolism is profoundly involved in signaling, physiological regulation, and defense response. The abiotic stress affect the biosynthesis, concentration, transport and storage of primary and secondary metabolites. Metabolic adjustments in response to abiotic stresses involve fine adjustments in amino acid, carbohydrate, and amine metabolic pathways. The proper activation of early metabolic responses helps cells restore the chemical and energetic imbalances imposed by the stress and is crucial to acclimation and survival. So abiotic factors, abiotic stress is plays a very major effect on the plant and finally the crop yield. First of all, let's see the responses, biochemical responses due to the abiotic stress. So if you see here, we have 4 factors here and the crops produce these kind of factors to cope up with the abiotic stress. First is the osmoprotectant. So osmoprotectant, you see they are the carbohydrates and the amino acids. So different types of osmoprotectants are there. I'll be dealing with it one by one. Then we have the antioxidants and antimicrobials, like they are either the carbohydrates, flavonoids, carotenoids, xanthophylls, tocopherols, and the GSH. Then you have the signaling molecules like the carotenoids, jasponates, salicylates, and the polyamines. This jasponates and salicylates I've already spoken about in the response to plant pathogens. Then you have the metal chelators, which are the phytokeratins. Then these are the responses regarding the abiotic stress in plants. We have the responses regarding the growth and the physiology of the plant as well as the molecular biology aspects of the plant. If you see the growth, it is the germination inhibition. Then you have the growth reduction, the premature senescence, and reduction in the production of the crop. Physiologically, if you see, you have reduction in the water uptake in plants, then altered transcription rate, then you have reduced in photosynthesis, then altered respiration rate, then decrease in nitrogen assimilation, then metabolic toxicity, then finally the accumulation of growth inhibitors. Then molecular biology aspect, if you see, you have the altered gene expression, breakdown of macromolecules, reduced activity of vital enzymes, decreased protein synthesis, disorganization of membrane systems. Abiotic stresses collectively are responsible for crop losses worldwide. Among various abiotic stresses, drought and salinity are the most destructive ones. Roles of compatible solutes in salinity and drought stress tolerance have been studied extensively. At physiological level, osmotic adjustment is an adaptive mechanism involved in drought or salinity tolerance and permits the maintenance of turgor pressure under stress conditions. There are increasing evidences from a series of in vivo and in vitro studies involved physiological, biochemical, and genetic level and molecular approaches, which suggest that osmolytes, such as the ammonium compounds, like example of the polyamines, glycine betaine, beta-alanine betaine, then dimethyl sulfonopropionate, and cholinosulfate. So these are called the osmoprotectants, okay, which are amino acid derivatives. And there are again sugar and sugar alcohol derivatives like the fructan, trehalose, mannitol, and sorbitol. And again, we have the amino acids, especially proline and the ectoine. So they perform important functions in adjustment of plants against salinity and the drought stress. And these osmoprotectants, even if they are accumulated in the plant at higher concentrations, they don't affect the plant metabolism. They just help to prevent the osmotic level in the cells. Then if you see the osmoprotectants again, they detoxify adverse effect of reactive oxygen species ROS and alleviate the drought and the salinity stress. An understanding of the relationship between these two sets of parameters is needed to develop the measures for mitigating the damaging impacts of salinity and drought stresses. So if you see in this picture, you can see the various response of the plant related to the production of certain osmoprotectants. The antioxidants are given here. You can see the antioxidants, enzymes, in the form of enzymes or non-enzymatic, two types are there. Then in case of this compatible solutes, these compatible solutes are the osmoprotectants. So they are, why it's called compatible? Because they don't harm, even their accumulation in the cells, they don't harm the general growth or physiology of the plant. So the compatible solutes, just now I told you about the proline, glycine, betaine, sugars, polyols, and the polyamines. Then you have hormonal regulation also is there. ABA, GA, gibberellic acid, auxin, jasmonic acid, salicylic acid, etc. And homeostasis, macromolecular homeostasis, ion homeostasis. Then first you will go to the salt stress. So the earliest response of the plant to salt stress is the reduction in the rate of leaf surface expansion, followed by cessation of expansion as the stress intensifies, but growth resumes when the stress is relieved. So metabolic process like photosynthesis, protein synthesis, and lipid metabolisms are affected due to salt stress. Plants are also affected by dissolved salt in the runoff water. So salts in soil can absorb the water. This results in less water being available for uptake by the plants, increasing the water stress and the root dehydration. This is referred to as the physiological drought, which is not, if not corrected, can lead to reduced plant growth. The salt stress always leads to a water deficit. So let's see about how the osmoprotectants play a major role in protecting the plant from the salt stress. So what are osmoprotectants? They are small molecules having a low molecular weight and are electrically neutral. They are highly soluble and non-toxic at low molar concentrations. The accumulation of osmoprotectants is a common plant response under abiotic stress. They basically stabilize the proteins and membranes and contribute to the cell osmotic pressure. Proline accumulates in many plant species in response to environmental stress. The maize plants suffered with abiotic stress and accumulated more proline. So this is an example of how proline helps the plant from the salt stress. So this proline, it helps to defend the salt dehydration and heat stress. So compatible solutes have a functional role in agriculture. In high stress conditions such as drought or high salinity, plants that naturally create or take up osmoprotectants show increased survival rates. By inducing expression or uptake of these molecules in crops in which they are naturally not present, there is an increase in the areas in which they are able to be grown. So this is regarding the genetic transformation of the genes responsible for the biosynthesis of the osmoprotectants. One documented reason for increased growth in regulation of toxic reactive oxygen species, ROS, it is one of the examples. So ROS, regulation of the ROS. In high salinity, ROS production is stimulated by the photosystems of the plant. The osmoprotectants can prevent the photosystem salt interactions, reducing the ROS production. The interaction of biosynthetic pathways, which result in the creation of osmoprotectants in crops, is a thrust area of research. So these are some of the osmoprotectants. We have the glycine betaine. So these are the structures of the osmoprotectants. Glycine betaine is there, dimethyl sulfopropionate is there, carnitine is there, proline betaine, ectoine. Then you have the trehalose and glycerol, glycosyl glycerol. This DMSP is the second one, dimethyl sulfonylpropionate, is very commonly present in diatoms, many marine organisms where the salt concentration of marine water is high. These marine organisms, they try to accumulate this DMSP to protect themselves from the osmotic stress. So this is a common osmoprotectant present in the plant, glycine betaine. So this picture shows the pathway of the glycine betaine. So glycine betaine is synthesized from choline. So this choline and by the enzyme is choline monooxygenase CMO. This particular enzyme, the choline is converted to betanealdehyde first, and this betanealdehyde, with the help of betaine aldehyde dehydrogenase, it is again converted to the glycine betaine. So glycine betaine is one of the very popular osmoprotectant in plants as well as in animals. So here in this picture, you can see how the salt tolerant plant and the salt sensitive plant give a response to various conditions in the soil stress conditions in the soil. So this black spot which is given here, dot, is the salt tolerant plant. Then the red one is the salt sensitive. So you can see the first picture, the grain ripening. So grain initially you can see the germination. So the black spot is the germination. You can see that salt resistant tolerant one starts to germinate. Then you can see the emergence of radicle and the primary leaf in the second photograph. Then again you can see the germination. So you can see again here how the salt resist sensitive one has germinated. And then you can see the tillering, panicle formation, flowering, pollination, and the grain ripening. So entire stage of the rice plant has been shown here. So what are the responses to the salt stress? You have the morphological response and the biochemical response, then how crop production yield response, as well as the physiological response. So morphological response, if you take, what are the morphological response? You have the stunted plant growth, leaf burning, chlorosis, low tillering, leaf rolling, poor leaf root growth. And if you see the crop production, cyclet sterility, less florets per panicle, less grain weight, low grain yield, and low harvest index. Then if you see the biochemical response, you have the oxidative damage stress, altered metabolism, high sodium transport to shoot, lower potassium uptake, and lower phosphorus and zinc uptake. Then physiological response, inhibition of photosynthesis, stomatal closure, decreased water content, higher amount of osmolyte, and low osmotic potential. So again, if you see here, how the adaptability to the compatible solutes given here. Compatible solute is nothing but the osmoprotectant. And here you can see accumulation of potassium and nitrate, and again detoxification of ROS. And this is because of the accumulation of the osmoprotectant. So these are the reactions. So because osmoprotectants are more, now accumulation of potassium and nitrate takes place. Then again the ROS is detoxified, osmotic adjustment is there, then finally it leads to the salt tolerance. Then if the stress adaptation, if there is no such thing during salt stress, what happens? Structural and functional modifications, like the signal transduction occurs, an activation of salinity tolerance genes, and finally the various modifications. Then it goes to the stress adaptation. Then this is an example of, this is an experiment carried out with the various concentration of sodium chloride, starting from, you have the control here, then 50 millimole, 100, 150 and 200 millimole. And you can see the plant, how it is able to withstand up to which, how much salt this plant is able to withstand. The 200 millimole, if you take, almost the plant is showing the stunted growth. Then next we'll go to the heat stress. The heat stress, if you see, most plants suffer when the weather turns hot enough for a certain period of time. It causes irreversible damage by way of plant function or development. The plant shows stunted growth, leaf drop, leaf scale, failure to flower, or failure to produce the seeds. Heat stress can occur from high daytime temperature, high nighttime temperatures, or high soil temperature, and is the collective result of the intensity of heat, the duration of exposure, and the rate of increase in temperature. The plants mainly wilt during high temperatures because the transpiration rate exceeds the rate at which they can absorb water. The stomata will allow vapor to escape. So this heat stress, these are major effects of high temperature on plant. One is the oxidative stress, then alteration in photosynthesis, yield reduction, alteration in dry matter partitioning, alteration in phenology, then inhibition of seed germination, reduction of crop quality, improper development, reduction of plant growth, water loss. So this picture here shows a tomato plant where it is affected by the heat stress. So here you can see the what are the metabolic changes. This. So here normal leaf you can take see and the heat stress leaf also you can see here. And in case of the normal leaf, the chlorophyll breakdown is there, generation of scavenging of ROS, inhibition of PSI. See, the leaf, normally normal leaf to heat stress leaf, it is that's turned yellow in color also. So this many changes occur just in the chloroplast. So the photosynthesis in turn is affected because of this. Then heat shock proteins. So this is one like just like the osmoprotectants in the case of salinity tolerance. You have the heat shock proteins here. So they are family of proteins that are produced by cells in response to exposure of stressful condition. They are first described in relation to heat shock, but are now known to also be expressed during the other stresses, including the exposure to cold, UV light, and during the wound healing or tissue remodeling. Many members of this group perform chaperone functions by stabilizing the new proteins to ensure correct folding or by helping or to refold proteins that are damaged by the cell stress. So this increase in expression is transcriptionally regulated. The upregulation of the heat shock proteins is a key part of the heat shock response and is induced primarily by the heat shock factor. The heat shock proteins are found in virtually all living organisms. And there are different types of heat shock protein, and they are classified based on the molecular weight. For example, HSP 60, 70, and 90. So they are the most widely seen HSPs. They refer to the family of heat shock proteins on the order 60, 70, 90 kilodaltons in size. The small 8 kilodalton protein ubiquitin, which marks protein for degradation, also has features of a heat shock protein. This ubiquitin you can see in the maize plant. A conserved protein binding domain of approximately 80 amino acids, alpha crystallins, are known as small heat shock proteins. What are the functions of the heat shock proteins? First one is the upregulation in stress. So heat shock proteins are also referred to as stress proteins, and their upregulation is sometimes described more generally as part of the stress response. During heat stress, outer membranes do not fold and cannot insert correctly into the outer membrane. They accumulate in the periplasmic space. These outer membrane proteins are detected by DEGS and inner membrane protease that passes the signal through the membrane of the signal E transcription factor. However, some studies suggest that an increase in damaged or abnormal proteins bring HSPs into the action. HSPs can also act as a chaperone. So several heat shock proteins function as intracellular chaperones for other proteins. They play an important role in protein-protein interaction, such as folding and assisting in the establishment of proper protein conformation and prevention of unwanted protein aggregation. By helping to stabilize the partially unfolded proteins, HSPs aid in transporting proteins across membranes within the cell. Some members of the HSP family are expressed at low to moderate levels in all organisms because of their essential role in the protein maintenance. Next is the management. So heat shock proteins are also occur under non-stressful conditions, simply monitoring the cell's proteins. So some example of the role as monitors are that they carry old proteins to the cell's recycling bin and they help newly synthesized proteins to fold properly. These activities are part of the cell's own repair system for the cellular stress response or the heat shock response. Next comes the drought stress. The drought is one of the most important abiotic stress that negatively influences plant growth and development. The imbalance in water uptake and water loss from plants occur when the water potential of the soil is lower than the water potential of the plant roots. The increased level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and associated climatic variability is the primary responsible for inducing the heat waves, flooding, and the drought stress. So global warming, so that also leads to the drought conditions in various parts of the world. So among these, water scarcity is a major limitation to crop productivity. Water stress can severely reduce the crop yield, and both the severity and the duration of the stress are critical. The water availability is a key driver for sustainable crop production, and its limitations can adversely affect the physiological and biochemical process of the plant, leading towards less yield production. The adaptation of crop husbandry techniques, this particular slide deals with the cotton plant. That's why it's mentioned as lynch yield. So here, the crop husbandry techniques suitable for cotton crop requires a sound understanding of environmental factors influencing the cotton lint yield and fiber quality. So various defense mechanisms, example, the maintenance of membrane stability, the carbon fixation rate, the hormone regulation, generation of antioxidants, and induction of stress proteins have been found to play a major role in the plant survival under the moisture stress. Then next is the drought resistance. So drought resistance mechanism in plant are composed of 4 categories. One is the recovery, next is avoidance, then tolerance, and the drought escape. So water stress avoidance is the sustaining of important physiological process such as stomatal regulation and exposed to mild drought. Drought tolerance is the ability of the plant to endure severe dehydration through osmotic adjustment and osmoprotectants. The plants are evolved to regulate the growth period to avoid moisture stress, termed as the drought escape. The drought recovery is the ability of the plants to continue growth after the drought injury. The plant roots are crucial for sensing and responding to various environmental conditions, stimuli, due to the direct contact with soil, water, and nutrients. So plant roots respond to the variation in surface soil moisture. Example, water deficit in the upper soil profile leads to deeper root penetration, while excess water in the upper layer reduces root penetration up to 3 meters. Water deficit in the upper soil profile leads to deeper root penetration from greater exploration of moisture and nutrients, while the excess of water in the upper layer causes the reduced root penetration. So this picture shows the responses to the drought. One is, you can see the physiological response, biochemical response, and the molecular response. The physiological responsibility, see, it is the recognition of root signals, loss of turgor and osmotic adjustment. Then you have reduced leaf water potential, then decrease in stomatal and conductance to carbon dioxide, reduced internal carbon dioxide concentration, then decline in net photosynthesis, then reduced growth rates. Then you can see the biochemical responses. You can see here transient decrease in physiochemical efficiency, decreased efficiency of rubisco, accumulation of stress metabolites like MDHA, glutathione, glycine, betaine, polyamines, etc. An increase in antioxidative enzymes like SOD catalase, etc. Reduced ROS accumulation. Then you have the molecular responses like the stress responsive genes expression, an increased expression of ABA biosynthetic genes, expression of ABA responsive genes. This is of specific proteins like LEA, DSP, RAB, and dehydrins. And finally, the drought stress tolerance. Then during drought, you can see how the stomata functions. So stomatal regulation during drought. So in plants, the main role of stomata is to regulate the water loss through transpiration. Under moisture stress, internal moisture preservation and quick stomatal closure are vital for plants to withstand the water deficit conditions. Plants use morphological adaptation to survive under drought stress. Leaf wilting and rolling leads to less radiation interception and ultimately decreased water loss. The plants usually show numerous xenomorphic traits and structures that induce the drought resistance, that is a thick cuticle epidermis, thicker and tiny leaves, smaller and denser stomata, palisade tissues, more epidermal trichomes, and a well-structured vacuole bundle sheath. Stomatal regulation plays an impressive role in leaf-grass exchange between the intracellular cavity of the leaf and the external environment. The plant leaves dissipate heat energy through three means. One is the re-radiation, then second one is the sensitive heat loss, and finally the transpiration. Of these, transpiration is the most important mechanism that sanctions the plants to harvest energy and sustain the cellular functions. As 90% of water loss from plants occurs through stomata openings via transpiration, stomatal regulation plays a major role in maintaining the water and nutrient supplies for essential physiological process. And high transpiration, stomata closure is the initial step to decrease water loss under drought conditions in crops. So this figure shows the condition of the stomata, opening of the stomata during the wet soil and the dry soil conditions. So here you can see that wet soil, moderate gradients in soil water potential is seen in the wet soil around the roots, allow the stomata to open. So more moisture in the soil is there, so stomata opens. Enables the transpiration. The dry soil, steep gradient around the root limits the transpiration and the stomata opening. So stomata is closed here. So here again in the drought stress, you can see decrease in leaf expansion or stomatal closure, increase in ROS scavenging, species like SOD, the enzyme. These enzymes are increased. Enzyme production of SOD, catalase, etc. will increase. Production of phytohormones, ABA also. Then cells accumulate sugars, amino acid, alkaloid, polyols, inorganic ions for osmotic adjustment. Then what are the, again, here main photosynthesis is maintained and a drought stress related process, and finally it will improve the yield. Here, if in the susceptible condition, here decrease in germination rate, reduction in photosynthesis and chlorophyll content. Then you have the stomatal closure, reduction in shoot mass, reduction in number of leaves, reduction in flowering, decrease in seed weight, seed count and seed composition, reduction in root growth and development, decrease in water and nutrient uptake. Next is the cold stress. So cold stress can be just as lethal as the heat stress. So when a cell freezes, the water inside it expands as it turns to ice. So this can cause the cell membrane to rupture and lead to cell death. So plants respond to cold temperatures by activating metabolic pathways that protect the cells from cold and freezing conditions. One protection strategy is to accumulate the sugars, which decreases the temperature at which the ice forms, similar to the effect of putting salt on the road. Another is to produce proteins that stabilize membranes to help them resist rupture. The transcription factors play an important role in activating metabolic pathways in response to changing environmental conditions that are the proteins that regulate the expression of genes and determine when they are turned off or on or off to produce the proteins they encode. So here we can see the cold responsive genes, which plays a major role in protecting the plants from the cold stress. The plants vary greatly in their activity to survive the freezing temperatures. At one extreme, from tropical regions, have virtually no capacity to survive even the slightest freeze. In contrast, the herbaceous plants from temperate regions generally survive the freezing temperatures, ranging from -5 degrees centigrade to 30 degrees centigrade, depending on the species. Whereas perennials in the boreal forest, they can survive the winter temperature below -30 degrees centigrade. The maximum freezing tolerance of plants is not constitutive but is induced in response to low non-freezing temperatures below 10 degrees centigrade, a phenomenon known as the cold acclimation. The wheat plants grown at normal warm temperatures are killed by freezing at about -5. Suddenly, if they are exposed to a low, very low, extremely low condition temperature, they will die. They will die. But gradually, if you increase the temperature or decrease the temperature, then it can survive. So here wheat plants which are grown at normal temperature, when they are shown suddenly to or grown suddenly at -5 degrees centigrade, they will die. But after cold acclimation, they can survive freezing temperatures as low as -20 degrees centigrade. The C-repeat binding factors are being demonstrated to regulate the expression of the cold responsive genes. There are two types of tolerant plants. Plants that show freezing tolerance among species and plants that show freezing tolerance due to cold acclimation. During cold acclimation, C-repeat binding factors activate cold responsive genes and subsequent accumulation of cryoprotectants, which result in the acquisition of freezing tolerance. Expression of COR genes can be regulated through CBF dependent and CBF independent pathways. Then COR genes are rapidly induced by low temperature during the cold accumulation, and many products of the COR genes have been suggested to function in the acquisition of cold accumulation and subsequent freezing tolerance. These products include enzymes to biosynthesize, osmoprotectants, late embryogenesis abundant proteins, transcription proteins, factors, then protein kinases, proteins associated with lipid metabolism, proteins for hormone response, cell wall modifiers, and the chloroplast proteins. So this picture shows the response to cold stress. The effect on the phytohormones. So you can see here auxin, gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid, and ethylene. All are the phytohormones. So how the auxins, the effect of the auxin. You can see the decreased flow of photoassimilates from source to sink, incomplete filling of kernels and seed abortion, stunted development of fruit. Again, you can see the in case of the gibberellins, you can see stunted plant growth, failure of inflorescence development, delay or inhibition of flowering by failure of floral meristem and floral organs, and the fruit drop. Cytokinins, if you take, it is inhibition of cell division, zinc efficiency of endosperm, decreases nutrient flow of endosperm, decreases stunted development of the embryo and endosperm. Abscisic acid, if you take, inhibition of loading, then you have reduction in capacity of endosperm to synthesize starch, then reduced tapetum, causing the pollen sterility. Then if you take ethylene, you have stem elongation inhibited, then immature ripening of fruits, so non-viable seeds are produced, then senescence is also promoted. Next we'll go to the heavy metal stress. So heavy metal stress, you can see here, industrial waste disposal. What are the sources of heavy metals? From industrial waste, secondary metal production and recycling plants, energy production and emission from power stations, then natural sources, example dust, volcanic eruption, forest fire, etc. Then use of fertilizer, animal waste, and sewage sludge, and again automobiles and combustion of the fuels. So what are the biochemical bases for heavy metal stress? Agricultural soils in many parts of the world are slightly to moderately contaminated by heavy metal toxicity, such as cadmium, copper, zinc, nickel, cobalt, chromium, aluminum, lead, and arsenic. So this could be due to long-term use of the phosphatic fertilizers, sewage sludge application, dust from smelters, industrial waste, and bad watering practices in the agricultural land. The primary response of plants in the generation of reactive oxygen species upon exposure to high levels of heavy metals. So the primary response is the production of the ROS. Various metals either generate ROS directly through Haber-Weiss reactions or overproduction of ROS and occurrence of oxidative stress in plants could be the indirect consequence of heavy metal toxicity. The indirect mechanisms include the interaction with the antioxidant system, disrupting the electron transport chain or disturbing the metabolism of the essential elements. One of the most deleterious effects induced by heavy metals exposure in plants is lipid peroxidation, which can directly cause biomembrane deterioration. MDA, one of the decomposition products of polyunsaturated fatty acid of membrane, is regarded as the reliable indicator of the oxidative stress. The plants have developed a very potential mechanism to combat with such adverse environmental heavy metal toxicity problems. The plant produced low molecular thiol that show high affinity for the toxic metals. The most important low molecular weight biological thiol are glutathione and cysteine, GSH. The GSH is a sulfur-containing tripeptide thiol with the formula the gamma glutamate cysteine glycine. The GSH synthesis is catalyzed by two ATP-dependent enzymes, gamma glutamyl cysteine synthase and glutathione synthase. So GSH is a substrate for phytokeratin synthesis and crucial for detoxification of heavy metal such as the cadmium and the nickel. The phytochemicals are small, heavy metal binding, cysteine-rich polypeptides with the general structure of gamma glutamine and cysteine N-glycine N equal to 2 to 11. The PCs or the phytokeratins are present not only in the plants but also in fungi and other organisms. The synthesis is catalyzed by the enzyme phytokeratin synthase, and the PCs form complexes with toxic metal ions in the cytosol, and they are transported into the vacuum. So they protect the plant from the deleterious effect of the heavy metals. So this is very similar to the salt accumulation or the awesome product accumulation during the salinity stress. Here in this picture, you can see the heavy metal inception, like the effect of heavy metal. One is the indirect and the direct. It's given here. Directly, if you see, you can see the biomass plant reduction in plant biomass, reduction in seed germination, root elongation, water status, then pigment content, mineral uptake, photosynthesis, respiration, protein antigens, all are reduced. With the indirect effect, you can see the generation of ROS, enzymes activation, then damage to lipids, DNA nuclei induction, chromosomal aberration, spindle activity disturbances, and cell injury. So now let's see a recap of what I've spoken today. So first of all, I gave a explanation on salinity stress. How a salinity stress occurs, then how the plants addresses this problem of salinity, and what are the factors or what are the regulatory mechanisms in plant. Similarly, next is the heat stress. What are the about heat shock proteins? How they help in the regulation of the heat stress in plants. Then drought stress. How the drought stress, how physiological parameters, morphological, physiological, and the biochemical parameters, how they are modified because of the heat stress. Cold stress. I told you about the cold responsive genes and how the plants protect itself, how they get acclimatized because of the cold stress. Then heavy metal stress, what are the types of heavy metals, and about the phytokeratins, which help the plant to which accumulate in the plant cell to protect them from the stress conditions. Thank you.